Welcome to Page to Screen, the podcast where Nikki and Christina discuss books that were turned into movies and films that were adapted from books. As always, we do remind you that spoilers lay ahead. Now, we invite you to decide with us the age-old question, which is better, the book or the movie?
Welcome back to Page to Screen, the podcast that's shaken, not stirred. Joining, as always, is my favorite double O, Christina.
I have killed two men, Nicole? Question mark?
You're like the worst spy ever.
I just didn't know I was a double O, so this is news to me. Well, how are you, Nikki?
I'm so ready to get into this.
I know, I'm
wish
so
I had my
excited.
martini, but we are recording it early.
It is 10 o'clock in the morning.
Breakfast martinis.
Just like Lucille Bluth.
How much could a banana cost?
No, I'm super pumped today about our subject matter. We're doing the 1953 Casino Royale, written by Ian Fleming, which we are also going to discuss the Daniel Craig James Bond film of the same name.
Yeah, this is really exciting because we are actually starting off our Battle of the Bonds, if you will. And I think that this one's really interesting because it's the first book ever, which is weird because you just jump right in. There's no introduction to who this man is. And then it's also the first Daniel Craig movie, so this is an episode of firsts.
Yes, and the movie also, it's came out 2006, directed by Martin Campbell, and then the other actors in it are Ava Green, Mads Mikkelsen, Jeffrey Wright, Judi Dench, actually a bunch of people. There's a decent amount of cast members in that, but those are the two that we're going to be talking about today.
It is like a who's who.
I know.
All James Bond movies are a who's who. And you're just like, I have seen this person in blank. And it's like, yeah, because they filmed in England. Like, that's why. Because they're everywhere.
Well, in the James Bond films, they always do this funny thing where if there is an actor that's getting popular or a lot of acclaim, especially if they are foreign or European, they always end up being a Bond villain. That's immediately their trajectory after any decent amount of acclaim.
This one's going to be an interesting episode because I feel like you and I can both agree. The movie version of Casino Royale is a pretty strong page-to-screen adaptation.
Yes, and I need to say from the get-go that I am going to have difficulty separating the book from the movie. I think this is one where we almost have to talk about both simultaneously. And I'm also, this is my coming out moment. I am a basic Bond bitch. I love James Bond so much, and I'm in a bit of a James Bond kick right now, so I'm pretty much going to gush about everything Bond, and I apologize.
You're a BBB, Christina.
I am a BBB.
And that's okay. This is a safe space.
Thank you.
But I feel like a lot of people get into that situation. Like I don't think I know anyone who's only ever watched just the Daniel Craig James Bonds.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody has seen another Bond. Like, I know that you and I talked about this before. We've seen a lot of Bonds.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen the old Bonds. We've seen the new Bonds.
Well, both of us, we both grew up with James Bond films being something that we saw from an early age. And I think that both of us, we also like older movies, so we watched a lot of them. So, I mean, Sean Connery to me was both of my parents' favorite Bond, so I've probably seen those the most. But I saw a lot of Pierce Brosnan and Roger Moore as well.
Yeah. Well, Pierce Brosnan's Bond was the Bond of our childhood. I mean, you couldn't look at an N64 without playing GoldenEye.
I know.
Like, to the point that, does my husband own a GoldenEye for, I think, the Nintendo Wii? Of course. Of course he does. And does he play it? Of course he does. And it's the same as the old game? Of course it is.
And it's so hard, too, to, like, not veer off the track a little bit about the subject matter of Casino Royale, because the director of the movie, Martin Campbell, also directed GoldenEye, and GoldenEye is my absolute favorite James Bond film until the Daniel Craig films. And
Yeah.
it just kind of, it makes me so happy to know that the director of my two favorite Bond films is the same guy and how different they are. It's just kind of fascinating to see one as such peak 90s, you know, Bond, and
Yeah.
then the other one being such a new, refreshing, delicious 2006 Bond. Like it's kind of amazing that he's got that range.
Yeah. And what I really love about especially the Daniel Craig James Bonds um is how many times they actually shoot on location. You can actually
Yeah.
visit the places that James Bond has been. You can be your own Bond kind of thing. I bet you there's James Bond vacations.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you there is. We should do
Well,
one.
when I was watching Casino Royale again for the podcast, it's one of those movies I love more and more every single time I watch it. If the first time I watched it, I gave it 4 stars, the second time's 4.5, and this time's 5. Like it's such a good movie, and I'm watching it, and it's got that massive, impressive scale that North by Northwest has. That you're just like this massive screen, all of these different locations. Every single time the location changes, you believe it. And the locations get even more epic in the later Daniel Craig Bonds. Every single time it just switches to a different country. It's such a wow moment.
Well, what I find so interesting is that we in this James Bond, we sit with James like the whole time in this movie. Whereas in previous iterations, we've pulled away from James as the character and put more emphasis on who is he defeating, why is he defeating them, what's going on. Whereas with this one, we really got to sit with James Bond, and it feels like the alternate to that with these Daniel Craig ones.
Yes.
Like you said, with the locations, suddenly the locations got bigger and bigger, and Bond kind of, I don't want to say he got smaller, but what he was trying to defeat got a whole lot larger than who he is as a person.
100%. That's absolutely correct. And it's very similar to what has occurred over the years with Batman, that when you watch Batman Returns, count the scenes that Michael Keaton is actually in. He's in the movie less than the villains are. So Batman gets lost in, these different movies because people are so excited about the villain. And the James Bond movies are exactly like that. And I think that's one reason why I love the Daniel Craig movies. And I honestly really, I really like the Ian Fleming book because I see James Bond more. I understand him as a character, even with all of his flaws, even with all of his edges, which his edges are, they're not just like jagged lines. It's like broken glass edges. Like he's a rough person, but I don't give a fuck. I think I think that James Bond is such a fun character study, and he is so complex, and he has so many layers, and he's really tragic. He's sad. He's broken, and he knows that. And I think both the Daniel Craig movies and in this book, he is kind of self-aware. I think he recognizes, I'm fucked up. I know my limits. I'm not necessarily even the good guy. I'm kind of a pawn in this, M6 game, and that's who I am. It's very nihilistic.
But I don't think you get that in the movies until you get to Skyfall.
I don't know. I think you do get it in the early ones, because even when James Bond, after what occurs with Vesper, he disappears. Yeah. And I think that him disappearing echoes what occurs near the end of the Ian Fleming book, where he says that he's going to resign. And the reason why he's resigning is, and this is one of my favorite parts of the whole book, is when he explains how he's a pawn, and he's like, yeah, I'm fighting this person now, but 30 years ago, our current conservative viewpoints would have been considered communism.
Yeah.
So the bad guys are always going to change. I'm just a pawn. I'm doing what they tell me to do, and I'm fighting people that are equally James Bond in their mind. They think that they are the hero and I'm the villain, and this is all pointless. Like, he sees everything as being absolutely meaningless. And that is just such a tragic character. And I think that the Daniel Craig one might not have that scene where he says it so explicitly, but his actions indicate that he feels the same way.
Yeah. Isn't there like a Mary Shelley quote, and I'm gonna screw this up, something about like evil doesn't know they're doing evil, they think they're doing good.
Yeah.
And that's basically what every character in this book is doing. Everyone thinks they're doing something good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just how you look at what they're doing that makes it seem like it's bad. What I will say, though, page to screen, is that James Bond in the book, I feel like, is more in tune with his emotions, and he definitely isn't nearly as gun happy as movie James Bond, because the opening scenes to this movie, he shoots a lot of people. Well, he shoots around a lot of people. Like, he's got his gun out that whole time, and then he literally explodes people. Which blew my mind, because like, and I have seen the movie, hundreds of times. Like, my husband's obsessed with the Daniel Craig James Bonds. Daniel Craig, I know you're in the neighborhood. If you ever want to be on our podcast to talk about James Bond, I'll allow it. We'll revisit this later. He's never gonna listen to this.
He is legitimately like your neighbor in New York.
Yes, like,
that's not a lie, listeners.
Yeah. Do I walk down his street? Yes, I do. Have I met him? No, I have not.
Have Halloween, you stared at him?
Have I stared creepily at James Bond? No, I have not. But maybe soon. Who knows? But the thing that gets me about that whole opening scene is that there's a part in the book where Christina will tell you, I flagged my book. I've got so many. They're orange because I couldn't find red, but they are everywhere.
Well, what's hysterical, I think we should do a side-by-side photo of your book and my book, because I think you flagged yours with all the problems that you read, and I flagged mine with my favorite parts.
I can't seem to find it. Is this the tag? Where is it? Oh, I'm never going to find it, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, what was the gist of it?
The thing that got me about this time watching Casino Royale is that in the book there is a threat made against James's life, where these two guys are going to blow him up. Mm-hmm. And he is crossing the street. He sees them on the corner of the eye, and he's like, these guys look weird. And it was all a ploy. Both of them exploded in like a big suicide bomb situation. And Bond is disgusted. Mm-hmm. To the point where he's about to vomit. He says it smells like roast mutton. And he is leaning over, like heaving, about to vomit. I'm sorry, did you see the opening to Casino Royale where he's just standing there, and then afterwards he runs away and he's got the backpack and he's got the phone? It's like, the Bond in the book has I think a gentler side to him, whereas movie Bond feels a little robotic. Until we get later on in the movie series.
I think that I definitely see what you're saying, and I agree. I think that there is a difference, and I think that the difference is in two parts. I think part of it is just because the scale in the films is so much bigger that something like just two guys accidentally blow themselves up is not exactly fun to watch. It's like a little silly if that were in a movie. So everything has to be a little bit bigger. And then I do think that in a way, with how we have progressed as moviegoers and the type of extreme violence, honestly, that we have seen our heroes often inflict on their villains, that something like Bond has now killed 2 people, which makes him a 00, actually seems a little minor. Like, killing 2 people, like, when Bond shows up, when it's Pierce Brosnan, you assume he's probably killed 50, 100, hundreds of people. I mean, that it's not that new to him. Yeah. So to hear that he's only killed 2 almost seems a little low when you first hear it. So I think that there is a little bit of, it's almost like they pushed a fast forward on his experience between the black and white open of the film and him running around. Like
Yeah.
it feels like he's maybe a little bit more progressed at that point, even if that's not even necessarily true. Like it just feels that way to make him at the scale that we expect a James Bond to be.
Yeah, a murderous man.
Yes.
Because if he hadn't been a 00 before, he just blew up 6 people. He's a 00 now.
I love that opening, and I love the how long it is. It just feels like such a long opening. It's a very long chase sequence, and I really can't think of another chase sequence that is that epic. And I just find that the mixture between the people planning the action, the stunt choreographers, the directing of it, it's all just so well done, and it has storytelling. It's not just a hallway fight scene that has nothing to do with like advancing the story. There's actually storytelling elements in it. And one of my favorites is when the guy goes jumping through that tiny little hole in the wall, and then Bond just like runs through the wall like the Kool-Aid man.
Oh yeah.
I love that part because I think it's actually a really good storytelling moment, like the difference between Bond and these guys. Like, yeah, he's doing the parkour stuff that was popular at the time, but he's also a tool in a fucking china shop.
Right. It is. And I think what adds to that is that Daniel Craig did like a lot of his own stunts. So you're watching him actually do this, and you're like, oh my God, like what is going on? And it is completely unexpected. You don't expect it's like going up a hill. You're constantly up, heightening every other moment. He's on a crane. He's on a crane, and then my favorite part is when he throws the gun at the guy.
I like that part. I like him throwing the gun, and I like how James Bond isn't even like the best. You know what I mean? Like he's actually a little sloppy. He's a little rough. He doesn't have like this perfect fight style. It's not like a John Wick that he just kind of moves with the, like he's a scalpel. Like John Wick is a scalpel. He's just clean, precise. And James Bond is just brutal. I mean, he's just a brutal fighter, but there's still little decisions that they made in the movie, like when it finally ends and it's the standoff and he's got the guy in front of him with the gun pointed at him, the guy is breathing heavily, but James Bond isn't. So it looks like James Bond's not even winded by everything he just did.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like James Bond is like, honestly, James Bond is kind of like a stormtrooper. Like he shoots everywhere, and every once in a while he aims at the right thing.
I mean, he's a good shot when he needs to be.
And I'm gonna veer off of Casino Royale for just a minute and talk about something that bothers me a lot about the Daniel Craig movie. I'm so sorry, next door neighbor Daniel Craig. About oh my God, can you imagine if he was like my direct neighbor? Oh my God. I just had a heart attack. We would have to stop this episode right now.
I would be setting, I don't know who I'd set traps for first, him or Rachel Weisz. I don't know.
Oh, Christina, Rachel Weisz.
So let me ask you about the mummy.
Yeah, can you tell me everything about Brendan Fraser? Actual 90s hunk Brendan Fraser, still hunk Brendan Fraser, president of the Brendan Fraser fan club right here, right now. The next movie in the franchise, so you have Casino Royale, which is at like a high peak. It's something unexpected. It's one of the last James Bond films to use the book, not just the title, but the entire book as a basis for a film, which hasn't been done in years. Most of the films were just using the titles and then like making stuff up, which I think is a disservice. There's a lot of great stuff in these books that I've discovered by reading it. It's like really interesting to get in James's head.
Yeah.
The sequel to this does feel extremely weak compared to what we had. And I'm just being honest. I'm sure there are other people out there who are like, no, it's great. And I know it's because of the writer's strike, and they really didn't have a lot of time to go through the script rewrites and figure all that stuff out. Here's the thing that I think they should have done. Okay. Okay. So, you know, the whole opening scene to Casino Royale, James is with this unnamed partner.
Mm-hmm.
We never hear from him again. We don't know who he is. And the whole time he's being pretty obvious that he is like a spy.
James Bond, sorry to interject,
Yeah.
but James Bond is always quite obvious that he is a spy. Like, that's the one
Yeah.
thing that I find funny about every James Bond film. So far, the books have not corrected this.
No, they
He
have
is.
not.
If I walked into, like, this morning I was at Starbucks. If I walked into Starbucks and James Bond was in the corner, there was probably 15 people in that Starbucks. I would walk in, and then without even really looking that well, I go, that's a spy.
Yeah.
That man is a spy. Like, it's quite obvious.
Well, James is very like unashamed of who he is, and he
Yeah.
owns who he is.
He does.
But in that opening scene, he's just standing there, like casually, like talking out loud, because that's what crazy people do. But he's just standing there talking. But his partner has his hand up to his ear, like, yo, what's up? 10-4,
Yeah.
over and out, like, you know. And then we never hear from that guy again. What if the sequel was James trying to find that guy who got him in trouble with the government in the first place? Because if he hadn't screwed up, he would have never had to have that chase and blown up all those people.
This is your Taurus pettiness coming out.
It really
like...
is. I keep receipts, I keep lists, and this is where I want it to go. I wanted James to find this guy and find out, who are you working for? You know, like, who is number 2 working for?
What you're saying is, Judi Dench is yelling at you for getting caught with the embassy, and then you're like, hi, where's Steve?
Yeah.
Because Steve is the one that fucked up this whole mission for me, okay? So you need to have Steve in here, right? Well, Steve got blown up because of what you did. Well, I guess then, okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah. I didn't know that, and I hope Steve's family's okay.
Comeuppance. I'm sure we sent him really pretty flowers.
See, I actually kind of like, what is it, Quantum of Solace?
Yeah.
I did not like it the first time I watched it, but watching it, all of the Daniel Craig's in order, which you and I both did this in 2021. So both of us are coming off of watching all the Daniel Craig movies in order, which is also probably the reason why we're talking so broadly about it. I just finished doing that around New Year's, and Quantum of Solace I remember not liking when I first saw it in the theaters, and I had not rewatched it again since then. Rewatching them all now, I kind of don't mind it. I think that Quantum of Solace feels like, if this book is, mine's 140 pages, Quantum of Solace should be like the next 30 pages. It just feels almost like a bookend to the first movie, and it feels necessary to the story, even if I agree that Quantum of Solace as a standalone movie is probably my least favorite out of the Daniel Craig Bonds. Like, if all of them were playing at once on TV and I wanted to just throw one on, that would probably be my last choice, but I don't dislike it.
Yeah, like if that was the first of the Bond films, I'd be like, goodness gracious. And then if they followed it up with Casino Royale, I'd be like, I am in it to win it, because it feels like a valley in the James Bond spectrum.
And it is a valley.
Like, Casino Royale was such a peak, and then you get this valley, and then we have to slowly build back up through the final 3 films. And we do. And I do think that maybe it works because James needs the closure, but I don't know, there was just something about it, and it still rubs me the wrong way. But like you said, overall, I think it fits. We need it. We kind of, like, there's a lot of films where you have like sequels where you're like, why are you doing this? And then you watch the film after it and you realize all the information from the film before it, really plays into it moving forward. So you kind of need a film to explain the stuff that you couldn't put in 1 and 3.
Well, and if you think about these movies where there's multiple movies, it's not just 1, 2, or even 3. Something where you get a character and you're seeing a character and it's supposed to be in real time. In real life, we're not all in our peaks. We're not all like doing things great all the time. And people tend to complain about like Harry Potter book 5. Harry Potter's kind of an annoying teenager, or even people getting let down that Hemsworth isn't a beefcake as Thor. But Thor's going through depression and Harry is going through adolescence, and Quantum of Solace, James Bond just went through a mind fuck. Like, James Bond starts as an orphan pawn who kills people for a living, and nobody questions whether or not this man's okay and his mental health isn't maybe a little questionable. And then you put him through this massive torture and possibly finding the love of his life, being betrayed by her, but not hating her. It's a lot to go through.
Speaking of the torture.
Yeah.
In the book,
Jesus.
it is 1,000 times worse than in the movie. And I don't want to bring it up because there are probably, maybe we have some male listeners on this episode. And let me tell you, I could not fathom this. And I have seen the movie, so I knew. I always thought it was, I feel bad now because he would do it and I'd be like, he hit him in the butt. No, the way they describe this, like it is brutal. It is horrendous. And there's, what is it? Oh, here we go. Le Chiffre returned to his chair and waited. He lit a cigarette and contemplated the spattered pool of blood on the floor beneath the inert body opposite. I'm done.
I loved it. I loved it. I loved every second of it because I love that part in the movie. And it is so brutal and it's so interesting to start James Bond with massive trauma to his male organs.
Yeah.
It's so fucking fascinating that is how you start a new James Bond franchise. And I just kind of assumed that this being a 1950s book would not be as brutal. So when I got to that part, I was smiling ear to ear like a fucking lunatic reading of this torture because I just assumed it wouldn't be in it. And the fact that it's not only in it, but it's actually a little bit worse. And like one of the details that I love it, is James Bond is, he's trying really hard and he's being extraordinarily courageous and brave. And he's trying to keep he knows what's going to happen. He knows, he's heard of people who had been tortured in the war and he knows what they went through and he understands what he's going to go through. So he's trying to like mentally just kind of compartmentalize his brain so that he can prepare himself. And then he finally kind of breaks a little bit and he asks for water. And Le Chiffre, when he originally pops up, he brings coffee. And I wondered, like, why does he have the coffee? And then he gives Bond the coffee and then throws it in his face. Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's so good.
It is so interesting because, you know, James Bond is supposed to be a man's man. He's a strong man. And throughout the book, he is toxic masculinity in walking form. And then to see him be so emasculated by another guy who is, in the movie, they make it... It's less like personal in the movie, you know. He's like Le Chiffre is standing there and like walking around him and stuff. In the book, they are literally face to face the whole time. It's some like Marquis de Sade situation, you know what I mean? Like it's very like,
yeah, it's so good. And
I wanted them to kiss. I'm gonna say I want them to kiss.
I know, and this is the funny part. So, Mads Mikkelsen plays Le Chiffre in the movie, and I love him so much.
Good.
I need a whole another 2 hours to talk about my love for Mads, so I'll try not to gush.
I was gonna say we needed him in the movie for another 2 hours. Like everything about him. Oh my god, I love him so much.
I love him so much. So I love him in the movie, and I really love the Hannibal show. And in the Hannibal show, it's very homoerotic between him and the other actor, and it's very homoerotic in Casino Royale too. And then it is in the book too. Yeah. He talks about him caressing him, that he caresses him, and it makes him feel uncomfortable. That James Bond to this point has been beaten, he's been stabbed, someone tried to blow him up, he's gone through fights, he's been dragged, he's been like all of these things, he's naked, and it's not until the caress where he finally flinches and he's uncomfortable. Fucking love it. Love it.
It's so good. I wanted them to kiss. Listen, I want James Bond to kiss all the villains. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Fight me on it, but come on. They got so close to each other in the book. Like he's literally he's being beaten with a carpet beater in the book. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen one. I have because my mom bought them for the set of Oklahoma when we did it in high school. So I have seen my fair share of carpet beaters, and there are some big carpet beaters, let me tell you. But for those of you who've only seen the movie and haven't read the book, he has the handle. It's almost like a big broom. He has the handle between his legs, and he's just like bringing it up underneath the chair. That's how close they are to each other during this scene. And it's both like this homoerotic, situation, but also like I can't imagine having to sit that close to someone who is inflicting so much torture on me and not be able to just give up.
Yeah, it's very cringy. It's very I feel my body tighten when I'm reading it. But I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's done so effectively.
I'll say that was probably my favorite. It sounds so weird to say it's my favorite part of the book.
I know.
And I think it's just the detail and the feelings, because you're with James Bond, it's like, cool, Baccarat, I don't understand. And then you get to this and it's like, the thoughts that James is having, these ideas of just like giving up and giving in. I think we've all done something where your mind wants you to shut down at some point. Like, I just ran my first ever half marathon, and halfway through I was like, nope. I knew
you would mention that on this podcast.
Of course I am. Listen, I'm going to say it loud, say it proud. I ran a half marathon. Jesse's going to love listening to that when he has that. But I like, you're weightlifting and your arms start to get all jiggly and stuff and your body's giving up and you're just like, ugh. That's what it felt like reading this part of the book.
But what you're explaining is the whole like theories behind, BDSM and all of that. And he talks about that, how the receptors in your body for pain and pleasure are the same, and how he had heard from other people, his coworkers as they talk around the coffee pot. He had heard from other men who had been tortured that at some point during the torture, they began to love their captor.
Yeah.
That all of them go through this thing, and then you have to recognize that that is fake and that's your body like turning against you, and you have to control it and you have to like move it back. And the whole playfulness between Lashif and Bond, it's very erotic and it's very interesting, and it's something I was not expecting from the book at all. So I was more than pleasantly surprised that it was there, and I think that that's what just makes this a more interesting book than your average spy thriller. There's a lot to each different act that the characters make. Yeah.
I just realized we didn't even talk about what the mission is.
But, in that, I think that, like, Casino Royale, and I just rewatched the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and I feel the same way about both of them, that the plots are surprisingly basic.
Yeah.
The plot behind this, there's a lot of names, there's a lot of government intrigue, but really the A to B plot is pretty basic. Like, you can just kind of replace the names and it's a completely different James Bond movie I've already seen.
Yeah.
So, but in that, like, it's so good. Same thing with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. It's so basic, but they're just giving you vanilla ice cream, but it's the best vanilla ice cream you've ever had in your life. It's fresh. The milk is fresh. Everything about it is perfect, which is why comparing everything after it seems hard to do.
Well, and I think that's because, like with Spider-Man, we know the story. We know the characters. And it's the same with Batman. We know where they came from. We know that Spider-Man is going to get bit by that radioactive spider. And we know he's going to be a crime fighter. We know Batman's going to lose his parents. He's going to go weird for a while, and then he's going to save the city. And we know that James Bond, no matter what situation he gets into, will get out and do it in such a debonair way that we don't even have to worry about it. And that's what's so beautiful about Casino Royale, is that you can add more to the characters without taking away from the actual storyline. Because the storyline is just, he needs to play, in the movie, he has to play poker. And in the book, he has to play Baccarat to make sure Lashif doesn't make more money, because Lashif took the money from in the book, it's Schmersh.
I know.
Which every time I read it, I went, Schmersh. It made me laugh. But in the film, it's
Boo Boo Banana. I don't know why I said that.
Oh my god, I forgot what the name of the place is now because I'm thinking about Boo Boo Banana.
Isn't it Ellipsis? Is it Ellipsis?
No, Ellipsis
right?
is the code, I think.
Oh,
I think it's
wait.
Spectre.
Oh, yeah.
The octopus.
Octopus.
I wish you could see my hands right now. Hey, octopus. It's the Spectre organization, and he took their money and kind of lost it. Like, oops, disappeared. And the whole point is that he is trying to gamble as much as he can to raise the funds to get back to the evil organization before the evil organization kills him. And James Bond is like, I'm going to gamble away all of England's money to stop terrorism. It sounds like the stupidest plot, but it is everything that happens around the game that feels so heightened. Like, a majority of our time is spent at that poker table.
I love it. I remember when the 2006 movie came out, how many people complained about that, and how many people complained about the time just around, a poker table. I love it, and I love it in the movie too. I think that there is something about both the book and the movie. The fact that my book is like 140 pages. The movie is like almost 2 hours, like 2 hours, 46 minutes, something like that. The fact that you've got something very short and something very long, and both tell essentially the same story. And one of them is just extremely efficient and precise. There's not a word wasted by Fleming. Like, everything is just very to the point. And it works. And then you've got a movie that added a whole bunch more scenes, a lot more action, more to the story, and it also works.
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It is. Like, the things that they added for the movie are like the James Bond heart attack situation.
I love that scene too.
I thought it was going to be in the book, because there's a scene in the book where he's drinking, he's playing and drinking, and then he gets that champagne, and he's like, I don't know where this came from, and he drinks it anyways. And my first thought was, it's poison.
You fucking idiot.
And then it, like, for a super spy, all of a sudden a mystery glass of champagne shows up at your baccarat table, and you're just like, oh, free drinks. No, you're a spy, and everyone in the hotel knows. What are you doing? And then nothing happened.
Yeah.
I was like, that's probably where they got the inspiration for it in the movie, because someone else read this book and went, is he stupid?
Yeah, and I like it's funny because you can kind of see how some like the heart attack scene that's completely made up for the movie. That there's nothing, but some of the scenes feel like they're just slightly different. So like when he when it's like the guy behind his back in the book, there's a different scene in the movie where there's someone behind his back with a knife, and that turns into a different fight. So it's like, what's in the book is still in the movie. It just, some things are just slightly tweaked and slightly changed, and then they added more because 140 pages is quite a light movie.
Yeah. And I every time in the movie when James puts in the password for the money, I get angry. Why would you make it her name, you idiot? But I guess now is a good time to talk about Vesper.
Oh, my God.
I like her so much more in the movie than in the book.
I love her in the movie. She's my favorite Bond girl. I can gush about her, too.
She, in the book, it's not that she falls flat in the book, but in the book, they make her out, and this is all because, misogyny is alive and well in Ian Fleming's James Bond books. Mm-hmm. They make her out, like, all of the stuff that she's doing is in the movie, too. Like, all of the going behind the back stuff. But James doesn't find out about it as quickly as he does in the book. In the book, he knows that she's acting weird. He notices that she's shifty. All of this stuff. And it's like, Ian Fleming is just reiterating the fact that a woman could never do a man's job. What? She could never be a spy? Look at her. She's shifty and weird. Look at her making weird phone calls. Ugh. Like... And in the movie, she's so strong and so capable, and when she allows herself to die, God,
it's so good. Everything everything of her in the book is in the movie. So that's I knew that she was somehow in the book, but I didn't know how close it was. So I was a little surprised that what you get in the book is pretty much what you get in the movie, but they just branched on. Like, they built so much more on her character in the movie that's not in the book. But yeah, it's funny because in the book, like, I don't know, in the book, Bond makes a lot of negative comments about women.
Yeah, he
what
does. Girl, have you seen the tabs in my book? I think there's a lot of them where he's just like, why send a woman to do a man's job? Shouldn't she be in the... He specifically says something about cooking, doesn't he?
I feel like I said that sentence, and then you can just, like, insert that gif of the pug and the triggered shaking, and that's you.
This is me going through all my tabs.
I'm sorry to trigger you. So, he makes a lot of negative comments about women, but the interesting part of it is that those comments, even though they are very triggering and you want to immediately get mad, are not necessarily substantiated by the women nor Ian Fleming. Like, the way that the story is told does not confirm Bond's biases against women, which I find fascinating because he makes a few assumptions. So there's a part where he's at the poker table and he talks about the actress who had divorced her like third or fourth husband, and she's there gambling off of the like divorce money that she got. Which is interesting because he's assuming that. Who says that she's not an actress and makes her own money and she's there gambling with her own money? And then when he explains Baccarat, whatever, when he explains that little game that they're playing, he explains it to Vesper without asking her whether or not she needs an explanation. So he's mansplaining the game to her. She might be very well aware of the game and how to play, but he just mansplains it to her. So it's weird because, like, you could argue that Vesper is the same character in the book than she is in the movie, except this Bond didn't give a fuck to ask about her, whereas the movie one does. Yeah. And it's just so cool how they're able to dance and play chess with each other in the movie, like right off the bat, where he dresses her down and then she does the exact same thing. And neither of them confirm whether or not everything they just said about one another is true, but they were both correct.
That's just his favorite part, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when James Bond says skewered. Not about them dressing each other down, but when she asks him how his food was and he said skewered, Jesse laughs like a madman.
Well, and isn't the next line after he says that, doesn't he say, like, but one grows to like it or something?
Something weird like that.
Something like that. And that's, like, the cool thing is that there is this kind of very fun play on these, like, sadistic lines.
Yeah.
Followed by something cheeky like that. And it's just, like, this fun dance between him and Lashif, him and Vesper. And when you dance like that, it doesn't end well.
No, it doesn't. I mean, Bond movie is much more... He's not nearly as misogynistic as... No one could be as misogynistic as Book Bond. Book Bond is a monster. Book Bond, I will tell you, had said, and I quote, and then there was this pest of a girl, he sighed. Women were for recreation.
This is my favorite part. This is I think, if you're reading what I think you're reading, I think this is my favorite part.
On a job, they got in the way and fogged things up with sex and hurt feelings and all the emotional baggage they carried around. One had to look out for them and take care of them. James.
Oh, wait, no. Are you going to finish it? Oh, I got it.
Oh, no, I was just... Do you want to finish it?
Yeah, so he... Wait, do I have it? Hold on.
In my book, it was on page 28.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to kind of skip over it. But yeah, he talks shit about her for like a whole paragraph.
Yep.
Okay. And the paragraph ends on page 27. And this is the part that had me laughing for like 2 weeks. So he just goes through all the reasons why he is annoyed that she's there. And then he goes, one had to look out for them and take care of them. Then you turn the page and he says, bitch, said Bond. And that's it. And then that's like the end of the chapter. It's just him talking to himself and yelling the word bitch in his hotel room.
That's also how the book ends.
I know. Okay, so when he says bitch to himself in the hotel room, it made me laugh so hard when I was reading the book. And so for days afterward, I would just kind of be like in the kitchen doing dishes and then bitch. Like, it's just so funny. I can't not laugh at it. And then I think that the ending of the book is, yes, it's supposed to kind of bookend that conversation to himself where he says that he's annoyed about Vesper, he's annoyed that he's attracted to her, and he's annoyed that he has to deal with her on the mission because she's going to fuck everything up. Yeah. And then the very last sentence of the book is, yes, damn it, I said was, the bitch is dead now.
Yeah.
I know that this is misogynistic, and I know it's sexist. Whatever.
Yeah.
I find this to be so tragic and so just heartbreaking for Bond because I think he really does, even in the book, I think he cares for Vesper. And I think that if you start this book with a broken man and then you put him through this horrible torture and you put him through the love of Vesper and then her turning on him, it just confirms every bad thought that he had. It confirms all of these horrible misogynistic thoughts, and it creates the monster Bond that you get for the rest of the series. This is the womanizer, the one who sleeps around. He doesn't respect women. He has a death wish, and I love it. I think it's amazing character building, and I know you're probably like, but Christina, I don't care. I love it.
Well, no, what I was going to say is that I think in the movie relationship between Bond and Vesper is so much better than the book relationship between Bond and Vesper because he's in the hospital, what did you say, like 3 months in the book? They don't give an exact timeline in the movie for how long he's there. And for the first month, he doesn't see her, period. He doesn't want anything to do with her. His main point being he was worried that after the attack on his penis, that he'd no longer be able to get it up for her when she walked into the room. That's just paraphrasing.
He also makes the comment though when she shows up and she wants to take him to the beach that he's afraid of scaring people. So I think that he was also afraid of scaring her.
Yeah. But then later in the book he does say that sleeping with her is a means to an end.
Yeah.
Because he wants to make sure his machinery still works.
Yeah.
It's in the book, people. I didn't make it up. But so once again, the timeline queen is here to break down this relationship for you. He spends a whole month not seeing her. Then he sees her sporadically between the next 2 months. Then they go away to this weird seaside French castle situation. And the morning after they get there, James Bond goes for what I imagine is his trademark naked swim. Because he does it every day. And as he gets out of the water goes, I'm going to marry her. Hi, can we, James, sweetie, I know you drank mystery champagne that was just delivered to you with no reason. You've known this woman for 2 months and a handful of weeks while you were gambling, and then you both got captured and quote unquote, attacked, because she definitely didn't, by these people. You got attacked. And now you're telling me you're madly in love with her and you want to marry her? Girl, listen, you in danger. Like, this is not a relationship. You can't be with someone for 2 months and just be like, that's it.
I mean, Carlos proposed to me after 2 months.
Yeah, but you had known each other he just met her. He literally just met her. This is a Disney princess situation that we need to get James Bond out of. Look at Snow White. Snow White met the prince once. Then he, without consent, makes out with her and carries her off to another foreign castle.
But here's what's sad about it. This is the tragedy. This is what transcends Vesper from your standard femme fatale to an actual tragedy. She loves him. So even if James Bond is once again drinking champagne from an unknown source and being a bad spy and is apparently allergic to red flags, he does know that she loves him. I mean, when someone loves you and you really know it, you know it. And he loves her. So that's the sad part, is that even though he's kind of an idiot, they're in love.
Well, I
Sad.
think book her is, and this is where people are going to fight me. I think book Vesper is more in love with James Bond than movie Vesper.
See, I think that's tough. I think that's really tough. I think that movie Vesper was definitely in love with him, but I think that she was more confused. I think that the way she dies when she kills herself is one of the most tragic suicides in like all of movie history. Yeah. It's so sad. It's so well done. It's so beautiful. But I do think that there is more conflict in her. Even though she still commits suicide in the book, it's different. Yeah. It's not quite as heart-wrenching.
Well, for Bond it was.
For Bond, yeah, it was.
But I feel like in the movie when Vesper leaves her phone, and that's how you know that she wants Bond to know what's actually going on. But she's still willing to give over the money so that they would release her boyfriend. And she has this boyfriend forever. Like, they don't mention it in the movie. M mentions it at the end of the movie, and it's a very quick thing, like, oh, Vesper had this boyfriend who was taken by a blah, 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 blah. Great. In the book, she writes him a suicide note where she explains in detail that she gets a letter from him, she's trying to keep him safe, but she's so in love with Bond, and she wants to let him go, and she stopped responding to them, and then they sent that guy with the eye patch. And then she's like, okay, now I have to call them because they're going to try and do something. And I don't want to die. I love you, but I'm going to kill myself because I love you and I don't want to hurt you anymore. And it's sweet. But I feel like if Vesper's so willing to give over the money, yes, she's torn. But I feel like she's leaning a little bit more towards saving her boyfriend than she is towards saving James Bond.
And here's the reason why. I have a theory. It's not something I really stumbled upon until this last time I watched it. When M tells Daniel Craig, James Bond, what's up, and she explains the other stuff that the audience wasn't, wise on during the movie, that, there was this other boyfriend, all this kind of stuff. The words that she uses, she says they were very much in love. And if you watch the movie from the beginning, when James Bond is being cute, you don't know if he's coming up with it just so that he can be in the same room with Vesper because he wants to get one suite, and she's like, well, we're going to have 2 bedrooms. He says, yes, and we're a couple that's very much in love. I think it's interesting that line is the same when M says it and in the dossier that he gets with his instructions, that he might not have actually been making that up. Maybe he was actually reading it, which means that M wrote it. So she could actually be embellishing a little bit about what their relationship was, because later on in the Daniel Craig series, when you actually meet the boyfriend, he's kind of a piece of shit. So it's possible that she was not as confused or torn about her boyfriend than we actually thought. Maybe she was in a bad situation, and M is doing what Javier Bardem later on says, which is she toys with them, and she tells them what she needs to in order for them to be really good spies. And the heartbreak and the lesson that James Bond learns on Vesper does make him an incredible spy. So that could be something that M, like a little egg that she puts in his head to make him kind of hate Vesper.
But here's where I think that she might be telling the truth. Have you seen The Tinder Swindler yet on Netflix?
No.
The basic premise is these women find this guy on Tinder, they start dating him, and all of a sudden he lies, says that he's like a diamond heir or whatever, and suddenly he's in trouble and he needs a lot of money to get out of trouble.
That's funny.
I think Vesper's boyfriend was the Tinder swindler. And I think because especially when you read the book, you find out that Vesper's boyfriend was actually trained by M and was captured. So he is a spy. Yeah. He might be pulling double duty, and he could be in the film realm also trained by M. He knows how to manipulate. So he might actually be like part of Spectre and manipulating Vesper. So she thinks that she's in love with him. She's feeling all the love for him. He's not in love with her. He's just trying to get as much money out of her as humanly possible so that they can continue on with their evil doings. Like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why you need money if you're a bad guy. Just make your own money, but whatever. Right? Wouldn't you have like a printing press and just make your own money if you're a bad guy? Like, screw the
Well,
government.
this is always the funny thing about bad guys. It's like the Arnold Schwarzenegger's plan in Batman and Robin. I think it's like to steal the money, or no, steal the diamonds in order to control this thing, and then he'll have the money for his research to his wife. But if you buy the diamond, if you steal the diamonds, then you have it. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, none of it. Bad guys don't have an actual premise to what they're doing. They're like, oh, so I'll take the money and then I'll turn it into molten lava, and when I have the lava, I'll take over the world. Well, you have the money, now you're rich. Just like be rich.
Well, it's just funny that villains are clearly not willing to play within the laws of the earth, but they do somehow have a respect on money. Like, well, I can't just steal it. I'd have to pay for it.
Yeah, I can't just make my own money. That's illegal. Hello.
If you want to do research, Dr. Freeze, or Mr. Freeze, he is a doctor.
He
but
was a doctor.
If I went to medical school, I'd want to be called Dr. Freeze. But Mr. Freeze, like, just do your fucking research.
Yeah.
Hold a bunch of people at gunpoint. Take over the lab and just do your research, buddy. Like, you don't need the diamonds.
Why? You could buy a lab and then kidnap a doctor, and then you're done. Why are you?
But you just went into the bad guy thought that he has to buy the lab.
He could just build a lab. Just build a lab. You don't have to like steal. Like, there are so many abandoned hospitals all across the United States. I know.
That's what I'm talking about.
Teens keep breaking into them and posting pictures of it on TikTok and Instagram. Just take one of those. They're available. They're on the grid already. You know what I mean? Like, turn on a light switch. You're good to go. Like, I don't know what you want. Like, that's the whole thing that baffles me with evil villains. Like, Lashif could have just printed his own cash and been like, whoops, here you go. Look, it's got my face on it because now I'm the president of the evil Smirsh. Like,
Smirsh.
Yes, here's some Smirsh bucks.
Just imagine that, because I really love the poster for it, but the poster for Spectre, and then it's the same poster with Daniel Craig, standing there, and it just says Smirsh behind him. It's a terrible name for a movie.
Smirsh is awful. Smirsh is a terrible name for an evil organization because it's not. We say Smirsh a lot, but I need people to understand it's not S.M.E. It is literally the word Smirsh.
It's Smirsh.
It is Smirsh. It sounds like what a cartoon character does when they fall off of a building. They get smirched.
I'll be honest, I don't like my pronunciation of it. I don't want to say that word again.
Smirsh?
Smirsh. Ugh.
It's like, I think smirsh is a worse word to say than moist.
Moist is fine. I don't know why. Like, there's this big bandwagon against moist and panties. Like, really? Those are the words that upset you? Okay.
Well, panties is a weird word. It should be underwear.
Panties.
Underwear.
I slid my panties off. You just slid your panties off.
Okay, James Bond.
Maybe that's why I like it. Also, this is so random, but there's a part in the book, it's when they get kidnapped, and Vesper says, later on when they're talking, when he's in recovery, she says, it was so childish of them the way they did it. All they did was they took my dress and held it over my head. But for being so childish, it's actually quite horrifying.
Yeah.
And I thought of it and I was like, she's right. Like, if you have a dress that's really tight around like the waist or something, like really fitted, that you can't just slide on and off, and then someone were to take the skirt of it and then hold it and tie it above you, that actually is really scary. Like, and it sounds silly. It sounds like a kid at a playground or something, but that's a rather effective way to
well, not only
take a woman.
Not only that, but like just the idea alone of being in a car with three men, and you can't see them, but they can see you from the waist down.
Yeah.
Like that alone, like, oh, I just got like a weird chill. Like that maybe that was what did it. It's just one of those things where you think, like, honestly, for me, I don't have cute underwear, so.
You're Bridget Jones on the podcast?
Yeah, I'm the Bridget Jones here. It would be very embarrassing for me, especially if it were that tight of a dress. You got to get the Spanx. I'd be wearing like a full like suit under there, like a suit of armor to suck me in to look good for James Bond. But like, to just like sit in that for a moment, just to be exposed. Like, even if you're not being kidnapped, if you were to run out on the street right now and you're not wearing pants, that's still an embarrassing situation. Add in the fact that you are kidnapped. Now it's embarrassing and scary.
See, I'm such a basic Bond bitch at this point, and I'm so stupid with some of the things I decide to do that I know there's going to be a day when Carlos and I are going out to like a nice dinner or something, and then he's like, oh, sexy red panties for later, and then I'll say, no, this is in case someone kidnaps me, and I don't want to be, like, I know that these will probably be more comfortable, we're going to be out for a while, but if someone, I'm done, like, I don't waste out, I want to look good, and then he's just going to look at me like, fucking idiot.
Well, and to go back to the misogyny of James Bond, when they are trapped in that car and he looks over at her and he's worried about her. He's concerned about her.
But he's attracted to her.
He's so attracted to this image of her, and it is so problematic because
it's sickening.
Christina and I talked about a portion of the book earlier before we started recording, where he considers sleeping with her to be I can't say it because it makes me... I know. It's... I don't want to say it. But I'm going to say it because now that I opened up the can of worms. Tanged with rape.
Yeah.
That's just a really awful, hideous way to say that she would resist you. Mm-hmm. Like, no means no. Yes means yes. And tanged with rape is an awful thing to write in a book.
I think that right there is the best change that they made in the movie. Yes. That James Bond is still problematic. He's still a womanizer. He's still going to mansplain to Vesper. He's still going to come in unannounced. She's in the bathroom. Thank goodness she's dressed because he sure as shit didn't check before he walked in. And he kind of condescendingly tells her she needs to look good and here's the dress.
Yeah.
But that's not the end of the scene. The end of the scene is that she did the same shit to him. And that sexually speaking, when you see the two of them, there's a lot of vulnerability to both of them. That, like, their first moment together, it's not a sex scene. It's not a scene of them kissing or of him touching her. Instead, it's when she's crying in the bathroom. And it's this beautiful moment of the two of them together where she's extremely vulnerable. Yeah. And yes, there's a sexual side of it because he kind of, like, sucks her fingers. But then
my God, it's so weird. I do... we will talk about that as soon as you're done with this train of thought.
Yeah, I don't think we'll forget it. So, he does this weird thing where he, like, sucks her fingers, but then... he does another weird thing, a very interesting thing, where I think most of the flex in a movie would be that he turns off the shower and picks her up and carries her into bed and takes care of her. Instead, they do something interesting where he just sits there with her. Yeah. And I find that to be so much more vulnerable and sexy and intimate, where he's someone who actually understands that she's going through something. And when someone's going through something, they need to go through it. It's not oh, you're depressed, well, why don't you try being happy? Instead, he allows her to just feel this guilt and violation and like she hurt somebody and whatever else is going on in her mind, and they just sit there for an unknown amount of time. Yeah. And that kind of tenderness and understanding from James Bond is nowhere in the book. No. Like that Bond is not in the book. And Vesper is now on equal grounds with him. And because he too doesn't necessarily like killing. Like he likes the easy kill. The brutal kill bothers him.
Finger-sucking James Bond. I just want to say the line that she says when he sucks her finger is, she's in the shower and she's sitting on the ground and she's fully clothed. Although, if you read the trivia, they actually wanted her like in her underwear, which would have been extremely awkward. She says to him, I keep washing and I think there's still blood on my hands. Yeah. And it is so depressing. And then he sucks her finger. If there was blood on her hands, you just sucked blood off of her finger. Like, what are you doing? This is not the moment, James.
I kind of like it. I like that part.
Read the room, James. Read the room.
I like that part. And I love that they changed it so she's not in her underwear. Yeah. I think little changes like that make the Bond movies better because you still get lots of sexy women. You get fucking Ava Green. Yeah. Hi. men love Ava Green, women love Ava Green. Ava Green's a great,
Yeah.
great choice for a Bond woman. And she's so beautiful. You still get side boob. You still get all of those things that everybody loves with a James Bond movie. You get the pretty girls, but she's smart and she's just his equal. She's his match.
Yeah.
And she's fucked up and she's tragic. It's so good. So good.
Talking about Ava Green and how she's basically like hot. Everyone thinks she's hot. Everyone thinks she's gorgeous. What I love about Casino Royale, the movie, is it's definitely female gaze centric.
It so is. I love it.
The classic coming out of the water that all the Bond girls do.
I love it.
And then you have James doing it.
Yes.
The first time I saw this, I was like, yes. Yes, yes, yes. And not just because he looks great. Like, and it's funny because Daniel Craig's physique isn't like super ripped, massive, like muscular guy. He looks like he would be a rich British guy who just takes care of himself. And I think that's what's really important to remember about James Bond is that he's not Batman. He's not Spider-Man. He's not Thor. He's not a superhero. He's a guy who was orphaned, who became a spy. And it's important to see that on screen. And when he comes out of the water, it is just one of those moments where you're like, this is where they changed James Bond.
Well, I think that scene is so cool, and I think it's important, and I think it's just, it resets everything. And what's cool is that I think that there's an interesting thing with men and women where we want to say like, oh, well, don't objectify us, and you know, we want to see the other sex and all of that. But there's also something about women where, like, you and I, we see someone like, I don't know, Ava Green, or someone like Dita Von Teese or something. And I like looking at them and I want to emulate certain things that they do. And I enjoy seeing them, even though there's not necessarily like a sexual component to me enjoying looking at them. Men are the same way. I think men like seeing Daniel Craig without a shirt on. I think that they go like, that's the guy. Look at that dude. Look at how cool he is. I like looking at James Bond. And then women have a different feeling, but they also like looking at him. So it's cool that they recognized that and put that in there because men want to be him and women want him. But then you've got the same thing with the Bond girls. And the Bond girls are cool because there is a horror to being a woman in this world. Yeah. Like, I would not want to be a woman in the James Bond world. I don't want to be Ava Green. Women don't tend to have very good endings in this like espionage society. And the deaths to women in the Daniel Craig movies are not as sexualized as they are in the prior films. And the best example comparison is oh god, what's her fucking name? I've got it in my head, but she's the chick with the short, like, reddish hair who dies the same way as they do in Goldfinger, except she's covered in oil.
Yeah, no, I know.
Gemma Arterton or something like that. Gemma something. Yeah. I like her a lot, but the way that she dies is the exact same way as the chick in Goldfinger, except I find it horrifying. She's got oil all the way down her digestive tract, and then she's just laid out on the bed, and I don't find it sexy at all. I think it's very scary. Yeah. And it's cool that they still have that. She's still sexually objectified during the sex scene previously, where you've got that really pretty shot of like her back. You know, it was like all over the trailers, I think. And yeah, her death is horrifying. Same thing happens in Casino Royale with the wife, where you see her and she's probably the closest to being like objectified in this movie when it's her on the beach and she's got the horse and everything and her like Stella got her groove back moment. Yeah. And when she's all like collected in the netting on the beach, it's not sexy. It's not pretty. There's nothing attractive about it. It's very horrifying.
It's very realistic.
You can still get this pretty Bond girl, but she's not just a pretty Bond girl. And her death is not something to be, addled about.
Yeah. Well, even with the objectification of her, I don't think the objectification comes with the horse riding. And I say that because it's always done in a long shot. You see her riding the horse the whole time. There is no close-up view of the waist up, which
Yeah, like
naturally would
lingering,
be.
like those other movies
Yeah,
do.
like
Yeah.
you would see the breast move as the horse
Yeah,
gallop.
right.
There is none of that. However,
Yeah.
we do have a lingering close-up shot of the waist up of James Bond
Of James
numerous
Bond.
times.
Right.
So I think like there is the main objectification of the wife comes when James is trying to like manipulate her into giving him all the information about her husband.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, that'll be for one. And he just leaves her. Like, no care in the world. He's like, bye, girl. I'm going to Miami.
That part's so funny. There's like, and this is another big change, is that there's, in the Ian Fleming book, there's zero humor.
Yeah.
There's no humor. There's no jokes. There's no funny quips from James Bond. There's no scratch my balls during the torture sequence. But there is humor in the movie, and that part always makes me laugh when he orders the caviar and champagne for one.
I love when he wins the car. And
I know, I love that part. He
picks her-
asks for the fucking valet ticket.
Yeah, and then he picks her up because she thinks it's her husband, and he's like, do you want to come back to my place? And she goes, sure. And then he just drives in a big circle because he's staying at the hotel.
It just feels like, oh, where do you live? Right here,
Yeah.
bitch. Like,
It's so funny.
I
It
know.
is so funny. There are a lot of, like, this James Bond is very funny.
yeah.
I will give
like
Daniel Craig that he finds and this is something that you and I have talked about a lot, that we are able to find the humor in the sad and awful bits. And I think that the new Daniel Craig also does the same thing. There's funny stuff mixed in with torture and guns and, you know, gambling. There's funny bits to it. And I love that.
You know, there's funniness, and then, you know, now that the last James Bond, and this might be a little spoilery for people, I won't say exactly what happens in the last James Bond movie, but if you haven't seen it, this might be where you want to skip ahead 5 minutes, just in case. With the conclusion of the Bond franchise, I think, or at least what we're pretty sure is the conclusion of the Bond franchise, I love it. I think it has a really good ending. I liked the last movie is not my favorite James Bond movie, but I liked it more than a little. I liked it quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is hope to Bond. I think that Bond in the movies never loses a bit of hope and humanity. I think he time and time again proves that he is not just a killing machine, that this stuff does kind of bother him, that he never got over Vesper's death, that he still is able to love again. I mean, that's a huge thing. The fact that he actually opens himself up to love again is huge. And I like Bond's ending, and I don't think he ends as a tragic character.
No, he doesn't.
But the Bond in the books, I don't have much hope for this guy. I don't think that he's going to have even remotely close to a happy ending.
No, he's not. I think that Bond in the books is too broken. He's not, like, that's the thing with this. I think that's kind of what I meant by when I said that Daniel Craig's Bond is kind of more robotic. I think that he's that's probably what I should have said, is that Daniel Craig's Bond is so strong of a person and so strong in his knowledge of his job. He knows what needs to be done. He knows how to get it done. Does he like it? No, but he's going to do it. Whereas Book Bond is brand new 00, and he thinks it's an easy job, an easy way to get in and out, get his stuff done, sleep with some women, go home. He's not, the Bond in the book is very much like a C+ student in high school.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, was I think that Bond in the movie, and this is one thing that you love about him, is that he's kind of a little rascal. Like, he has a lot of ambition. He has a lot of drive, to the point where he breaks the rules. He breaks into M's house, completely violating any boundaries that a normal person should have for both a mother figure and a boss. And he like made myself laugh. The the part when he's talking to Judi Dench on the phone and he's like, "Let me call you back," and hangs up on her, and then her just like,
Yeah.
it's so fucking funny. I laugh so hard when it happens. Like, I just made myself cough. Just like how flabbergasted she is that he would ever dare to hang up on her in the middle of her chewing him out. And that's that Bond. That's not the Bond in the book. Like, this Bond in the book is not. Yeah, he's more of like, he's doing his job and he gets it done, but he's not going to go that extra mile the way that the Daniel Craig does. Like, Daniel Craig will do anything to get it done, no matter how many innocent people he has to kill, like Peacemaker. And he is a rule breaker, and he's kind of like this wild card that M has to both use intelligently and kind of like deal with. It's not exactly the best spy of the group, if you will.
Oh yeah, he's definitely not the best spy. But he might not be the best, most proper, most inconspicuous spy, I should say, but he's the spy that you want.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's the one you know is going to get the job done and wrap it up pretty fast. Whether or not he falls in the lines of the law, that's up for debate, but you can trust him. You can trust movie Bond. Book Bond, I feel like, lucks into a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, even, like, this whole book is basically about luck. He gets a lucky hand and wins his money back. He's lucky that Felix is there to give him more money so he can keep playing.
Yeah, there is a lot of luck, but there's also moments where he outsmarts people. So, like, there's the part when he is, he's being tortured by, I think this is that part, when he's being tortured by Lashif, which I just want to say Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah,
he's
Mads.
in my mind. Even though he doesn't necessarily fit the description in the book, I love Mads so much that it's Mads the whole time. But Lashif says, like, "Oh, we found all of this stuff that you hid in your room very childishly under the bed and behind, whatever." And then at the end, you find out that he hid the promissory note or whatever the fuck it is it's like...
Oh my God, this is my favorite hiding place now. And I've been looking at
I know!
as someone who lives in an apartment that has a number on their front door, I am definitely all about this hiding spot. Now that I've said it on the podcast, everyone's going to look at my number. There's no checks on my door, I promise.
Yeah, it's like when you look at doors, it's like the number, he just unscrewed it and then tucked it tiny, tiny, tiny behind it and then screwed it back.
Yeah, like a little house
so
plaque.
Smart.
It's so smart.
He gets called childish as if he's just like this dumb spy that didn't know any better, but actually he's brilliant and he did have a hiding space. But you don't find that out until after all of that's over. So there's still like moments of brilliance that he has. He's just not as rule breaking, get the job no matter what, no respect for authority the way that Daniel Craig's is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Craig's James Bond really brought a new life to the franchise, and without spoiling what, like, the fifth film, I am interested to see what happens next. It is a money-making franchise. It is the Batman. It is the Superman. It is, it is something so ingrained in pop culture that I would be surprised if they don't continue with another actor. Idris Elba is number one in my book. I just think he'd be so good. I saw him in Cats. He was so good.
God.
He would have to have a fun catchphrase like magic, poof. No, but seriously, I think Idris would be really
naked
good.
Idris Elba in Cats still scares me when I think about it.
But I think that there's only there's three options for James Bond to go in at this point. One, the woman in the final film who
she would be cool. She'd be cool.
Yeah, they promoted her to his number. She is now 007, which I thought was interesting. I didn't realize you could just give the numbers out. I imagine, I guess.
Well, this isn't like the NFL, like when they retire somebody and they were really big and then they just pull up their jersey to the top. Like, there's no.
But it makes me wonder, like, they should though. It makes me wonder, like, okay, how many numbers are there to be 00? Does it end at 9? And then they have to start over again? Like, and if you kill more than 2 people, do you get to be like a 000? I'm so confused on this. Like, when you are a spy, are you just a number? Like, am I just like spy 1, spy 2?
Well, but part of that is why he is just a number, and he knows he's just a number. And that's part of all of the like nihilism behind his characters, why he doesn't give a fuck. I mean, even when him and Vesper have their first dinner in the book, he explains that the reason why he lives it up is it could be his last day.
Yeah.
He always, when he eats on these missions, he gets the best of the best. He's eating lobster. He's looking up the oldest wine and drinking that because he could die. I mean, think about that as a person that constantly you think people are shit. They're proved to be shit. You could die at any minute. Even in the movie, he says to M, double-O's have a short lifespan.
Yeah.
So even though the Daniel Craig Bond isn't like as clear in his worldview the way that the book one is, you get hints that he's thinking the exact same things. Yeah. And that's what makes a problematic man.
Well, I mean, listen, James, you might think that you are the only person who lives it up when you're on a mission. Listen, if my company sends me out on a trip and they're paying for everything, yeah, I'm drinking the oldest wine. Yeah, and then I'm expensing it back. You know why? Because you put me in this position. So I feel you, James. I'm not a spy.
Yeah, but Nikki, the stakes are completely different. Your stakes are, and I might gain 5 pounds over the next 3 days. But his is, I could be deadzo.
Hi, I still have to get on a plane. It's COVID times. The stakes are high. God, Christina, like you don't even care.
Oh, my bad. You're correct.
So, okay, now that we still haven't figured out how they pick their numbers, I'm going to assume it ends at 9 because 0010 doesn't have the same ring as like 009. Do you know what I mean? And because, like you said, James Bond says in the movie that they have a short lifespan, I imagine they cycle through these numbers a lot.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I am going to say, here are the options to continue with James Bond. 1, female 007. We've already put her in the film. Why not just continue it? Option 2, we go with someone like Idris Elba, who is about the same age as Daniel Craig. Keep it going.
Isn't he too old now? I thought he's too old now.
He says that he's old, but I think you need a seasoned vet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the problem is that, and this is the same problem, sorry to keep interrupting, it's the same problem with Ben Affleck Batman. It's like, I don't have a problem with a 50-year-old James Bond, but the problem is that they want to make like 10 years worth of movies. So I don't have a problem with a 50-year-old Batman, but a 60-year-old Batman is a bit of a joke.
Well, then that leads me to my last option, is that we're going to go younger. And we're going to get, I don't want to say teenage Bond. Hell no. We're not going to get, like voice-changing James Bond.
Hey, guys, stop with the bombs. I don't know why I'm Don Knotts as James Bond.
I was like, okay, cool. That was weird. Don't do that again. No, what I meant by young Bond is like they have to be old enough to drink, and they have to be able to drink a Vesper. So they have to be someone who's between the ages probably of 25 to make it realistic with the training. Look at me doing my timelines. They have to be at least 25 in my mind. And you have to take a look at what actors we have now. So like Taron Egerton, is that how you say his last name? The one who did Kingsman.
Yeah.
He was good in Kingsman. He can do the action sequences, but would they want someone who already did a film similar to James Bond playing James Bond? You know, we're going to come up with these sort of people like Daniel Radcliffe, you know what I mean? Like, this is the age that we're looking at as a quote-unquote younger James Bond.
I'm not ready. I'm still in this relationship. I'm not ready to move on.
No, no one is.
I love Lamp. I love Daniel Craig Bond so much that I'm not ready to let go. I'm not even ready to let go of Casino Royale, and that movie is almost 20 years old at this point.
But see, that's the thing that we're going to get into an issue with is, are we ready? are we ready for a new Bond? Do we want a new Bond? I mean, when Daniel Craig was cast as Bond, people were like, "A blonde James Bond? Are you kidding me?" That was the problem. He was blonde, and it worked for him. He was a great Bond. Are we ready to lose our bond with Bond?
I think that the unique situation we find ourselves in with the Daniel Craig Bond is that it's a surprisingly long time for one film series.
Yeah.
The years between the movies are surprisingly long. Like usually they try to make these things closer in age, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, but like 5 years in between two movies within the same franchise is sort of insane. So I understand like Daniel Craig being a little hot and cold over the years about whether or not he'd like continue at times, just because he is getting older and it's a lot of physical stunts and stuff. But he made such a ridiculous amount of money doing Bond that I don't know.
That he now lives in my neighborhood. No, what I find interesting about James Bond, Daniel Craig specifically as James Bond, this movie came out in 2006. This would have been, I just graduated high school. And this is your senior year of high school. Daniel Craig is our adult Bond.
I know.
Like, he got me through college. He saw me in my first professional career. Like, he has been my Bond through COVID. Like, he is my James Bond through monumental things that have happened in my life. My James Bond was Daniel Craig. I didn't have another Bond.
But, I really did not appreciate the Daniel Craig Bond until December of 2021 when I watched them all together. Like, I really didn't appreciate it at all. Like, it kind of flew under my radar in a way, which is really strange. Like, because I've always been such a Bond person. I'm not too sure why there was a little bit of a disconnect. But when I rewatched them and I watched them all together, and there is you know what? I'll say this just on me personally. I'm also in a bit of a Jeffrey Wright kick. I think he is an amazing actor, and I've been watching more of his stuff, and I just find him to be a really great actor. And I also, this time around, is post Hannibal, so I'm also just like in love with Mads Mikkelsen as an actor. I think he's so good. And this is post Knives Out, and I know a lot of people were like questionable on Daniel Craig in that movie, but I loved him in that. So it's like my love for all these people, Ava Green included, has been increased like tenfold for each of them. So it's like there's not much for me to dislike with Casino Royale. And to start with that one, and then the story that I didn't realize was so strong from movie to movie, it's just so good.
Yeah.
So good.
And for me personally, it's the same thing with you. Like, yes, he's been my adult James Bond, but it took me a while to get into him as a Bond. And I wonder if it was the length in between the films that really was like, okay.
They also came out, the movies came out, both of us, that being you just graduating high school, me about to, that's a very transitional period in our lives too. And at that point, we were probably distracted a bit with stuff like The Dark Knight and other things that came out where we weren't as into.
Yeah.
And with Quantum of Solace being the second one, and everybody kind of talking shit about both movies, that probably also had less hype for us to be excited about it.
And also, as we stated earlier, you and I were very much like old James Bond.
Yeah.
Like, we love a misogynistic male on camera. There's just, because it's something you can laugh at. Like, the films might not be funny. The books are not funny. But reading the books today, with the umbrella of what we've been going through, laugh riot. I have never had such a good time with such a short book, except for the book version of Jumanji. Like, it cracks me up.
Well, it's like the difference in the misogyny is that Bond quite specifically says that he's not really into Moneypenny because she's too smart.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, when he says, "You're not my type" to Vesper, and then she says smart, and then he goes, "No, single." And I feel like in the book, had she been like smart, he would have been like, "Yup."
Yep.
But in the movie, it's clear like he doesn't mind if she's smart. It's just he minds that she is single. It
Yeah.
makes it more difficult for him.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because she's not single, by the way.
She's not.
So it's like he still has continued his obsession with women in relationships.
Maybe he's colorblind, and that's why he can't see all these red flags.
Maybe.
This was fun. Like, honestly, James Bond is fun.
Yeah.
Like, we could talk trash about him being misogynistic and how terrible he would be. Like, if he were a real live person, jumped off that page, he'd be an awful person. But overall, this was fun.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at what we've been doing recently on the podcast, it was very, like, we're not, compared to previous years, we haven't really dived into the male psyche on books this year.
Yeah, we've been a little bit more girly heavy so far. And then this is, definitely a big switch. And, for me personally, too, right before I read this, I read a different book. It's, what was it? A Lush and Seething Hell, something like that. And I really liked that book. I thought it was good. It's actually like 2 books within one book, basically. But I thought it was good. The one thing I'll say about it, though, is that it's just big and it's long. And he definitely, the way he writes, it's just a lot of details and it's fun, but at times it felt borderline purple prose and kind of writing just to write, you know what I mean? You're kind of languishing in your words at the moment instead of using them to tell a story. It's over detailed a little bit.
Oh, like Stephen King.
to go from that book to this book and how this is not overwritten. It's so tight and to the point. It was a little nice to do that, to switch that. So it's we went from a bunch of girly stuff and then I also went from thicker books to this is a lot tighter, but it's not just a throwaway dime novel. You know what I mean? Sometimes when you read these short paperbacks, it's kind of just sort of trash. But this is definitely still a literary book.
Yeah.
I mean, his writing is really good and his vocabulary is expansive, but it's to the point.
Yeah. Well, the James Bond books, the series, the Ian Fleming series, are still the #1 sold series in the world.
Are you gonna? Because we've talked about we're doing obviously this one and we're doing Dr. No, but if Dr. No is good, once we do that one, I will probably
continue. I will continue.
Yeah, I will probably continue with James Bond. I really liked this.
I didn't think I was actually going to enjoy the book because I like the movie so much.
Right.
I
same.
was concerned that the book was going to be such a letdown, but like you said, the prose, he uses such expansive words and it feels lush for a detective novel,
Yeah.
For a pulp fiction, it is posh.
As we are coming to the end of this, I am curious about the question that we usually ask and what your answer is going to be.
Which I prefer more, the book or the movie?
Which do you prefer and do you recommend?
I recommend both, definitely,
yeah,
100%.
Me too.
And I think it's kind of hard to separate the two because it's a really good page to screen adaptation, I would think. Mm-hmm. But I would definitely recommend the movie over the book.
Yeah, I'm the same. I love both. I recommend both, and I love the movie more. Yeah. And it's one of those rare times when, and this is what just makes me so fucking satisfied. I can be a little bit of a hater sometimes. So I feel recently I've just been satisfied a lot. I'm just watching a lot of movies and TV that make me happy, which is nice because sometimes there's a drought. But recently I've just been very satisfied. Yeah. And I feel this book kind of confirmed how much I love the movie. I love the movie even more now, knowing what a phenomenal adaptation it is and how they took everything that was good and the stuff that needed to be improved got improved. Yeah. Everything that they do is just flawless. It's good.
Yeah, because that's my reasoning too, is that it's an elevated Bond. He is. Yeah. They took out all the negative from him in the book and made him a real class act, I feel like a murderous class act, but a class act nonetheless. Um,
And there's just like we didn't even really talk too much about the director, but it's just so fucking interesting. Like he's got a really interesting career, and he did some really cool stuff in Casino Royale, and there's just like certain things that just visually speaking, like as a director, I loved in the movie too. So it's like story, yes, acting, yes, like vibes, yes. It's just everything is yes.
yeah. I'm all about it. I'm all about it, which is why I don't even know. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say. I don't even know if we need to take a long break for the book list.
Here's what I'll say. I am a basic Bond bitch.
We've heard.
I need to say it again because I do think I'm being fair enough when I say it. I think it's the best so far this year. But I am also on a Bond high right now. And I reserve a footnote that perhaps Christina could come up with in like June of this year. Like maybe with some distance, I might change my mind. But I'll be honest, I don't think I will. I think that even with what a high I'm writing on with James Bond, that I do think it's just a really good adaptation.
It is. Like, we've said it a lot.
Good.
Like, everything that's in the book is in the movie.
It was shocking over and over and over again when it just kept being the same.
Yeah. And it felt weird to read it having already seen the movie 100 times and be like, I know what's going to happen. Like, this is bizarre. Like, I feel like I've already read the book.
Like, physically speaking, the only difference between Vesper is that she's got short hair in the book.
Yeah. Oh, and she wears
But otherwise, her description kind of fits. And then, like, Lashif, like, his is a little bit weird. Like, there definitely are some changes. But his actual demeanor appears to be the same. Like, again, I could be reading into it. I could just be picturing Mads because I love him. But I do think that even he is, like, just a really good adaptation of the character.
Yeah. So I will agree with you. And I mean, this could turn out to be a situation like what happened with High Fidelity last year. Where it just, like, you can't stop. I still can't stop thinking about High Fidelity. I might want to watch that today. I really love it. So the book list then, currently, after this one, and who knows what's going to happen after the next James Bond, is number 1, Casino Royale. For all the BBBs out there, you got this one. Number 2, Cinderella. Number 3, Jesus, It's the Commitments. Number 4, Bridget Jones's Diary, VG. And pulling up the rear, which makes me sad, is how Stella got her groove back, because we agree. Honestly, this is the hardest book list, the hardest one so far. In my mind.
Yeah, it's the book list this year is kind of like putting your favorite stuffed animals in order. It's like there's not really anything that's been bad, like nothing bad so far. It's just some are better than others.
Yeah, it's so hard to choose. But
because even Bridget Jones, I think, is a pretty good adaptation, but it's just different.
Yeah, and the stories have all been fun that we've read. Like, I haven't hated anything. We do not have a Ready Player One in the bunch, period, right now.
I just feel like the other movies or the other adaptations would have been better had there been mutilation of genitalia and Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah. So if we could add those to like a Bridget Jones, I would probably rate it higher.
Bridget's dad is played by Mads.
He just like fucking slaughters her mom for cheating on her.
Bridget comes home like, where's mom?
Oh, why don't you sit down and have dinner? Fuck. Different, better movie.
Dad made liver. VG.
VG. I'd watch the fuck out of that movie. I'm not lying.
So with that,
it's like I'm sorry, but like last year at some point, my boss asked me like, "Have you seen the Queen's Gambit? Yeah, I bet you'd like really like it." And I probably would like the Queen's Gambit, to be honest. Yeah. But my answer back to her was, "Are there lightsabers or dead bodies?" The answer was no, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm not into that right now."
It's a very good question to ask.
If there's lightsabers and or dead bodies, I will probably like it.
And with that, um, next up in the Battle of the Bonds is the first James Bond movie, period. Dr. No.
I am so excited. And usually when you and I record things, I'm at least a book ahead of our recording time.
Yeah.
And this time I specifically waited to not read or watch it until after we recorded because I want a completely new idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted this out of the way because these are so fast. I could read this in a day. So I'm very excited.
Me too.
I wonder what's going to happen.
Me too. I haven't read it yet. I was waiting for us to record so I could be fresh new Bond.
Yay, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Bum.
I'm super excited because now we're basically traveling back in time.
Yeah.
And how coming off of Casino Royale, which is such a good page to screen adaptation, I have high hopes, but I'm also reserved in those high hopes.
Same.
And it's going to be interesting to read the book because the book is actually the 6th in the series. So we've already met James Bond and he's gone on all these adventures, and we aren't reading the other ones in between. So I don't know how it's going to be at the start.
I read a little bit because I was worried about us. I was like, oh, I hope we're not kind of setting us up for failure. I don't think we are. I think that we're safe reading Dr. No next because I believe that it's either Dr. No or Goldfinger where the actual consistency in the story going forward it starts there. So I think we're okay.
Okay. So I'm excited. We're gonna, talk all things James Bond again. And yes. I'm gonna ask Christina the ultimate question, so she's better start thinking about it now. What is because this works because we're traveling back in time and everyone knows James Bond. Christina, your assignment from me, N.
Should I choose to accept it?
No, it's me, N, your boss. I can never kill anybody. That's why I'm the boss. And that's why you're 00. Your assignment, I want to know your all-time favorite James Bond theme song.
Oh, shit.
I know.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh. I have 5 favorites.
Well, at the end of next episode,
okay, I'll think about it.
You have to have your number one. Put them all out to pasture. You know what? We can do a top 5. How about that? Will that make it easier or will that make it harder?
Well, top 5 I can go through right. Well, wait, no, I can't. Oh, no.
And this is great because Christina and I were both listening to. We had just re-listened to Billie Eilish's song for the finale of the James Bonds, and came across something that blew our minds. Yeah. And now we're both screwed up. So there you go, people.
Well, there's such an art to the James Bond opening. I love the openings to James Bond movies, and I love the music. And the interesting thing with the Daniel Craig movies is that they tended to go for a softer song than just a poppy rock hit the way some of the other ones were.
Well, with the exception of Casino Royale.
I talked a little bit of shit about the Billie Eilish one because I was just that's surprising. That's a very slow kind of song, but off of what we discovered, now I kind of love it.
I know. So we will be back with Dr. No and a full rundown of James Bond theme songs.
Yes.
I'm very excited. I'm super pumped. And we will not bring up Chitty Chitty Bang Bang again.
I'm about to go to a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang right now.
Listen, what you do with your red panties is your business. Oh, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, we love you. And with that, once again, thanks to our own, Q, Jesse, who sets us up.
Thank you, Q.
Thank you, Q. Thank you for making us sound a little bit smarter than the book version of Vesper. And thank you, Christina, as always, for being my number one spy.
Oh, maybe I'm your number 007 spy.
Oh, wink, oh, wink.
Thank you for being my perfect M, where I can disregard the rules.
Always.
And I could show up 20 minutes late to our podcast recording. It's a very James Bond of me.
That is James Bond of you. It is. Are you gonna hang up right after?
Yeah, hang up in the middle and you're just flabbergasted.
All of a sudden I'm doing the goodbyes by myself and it's just, okay, cool. Thanks.
Guess that bitch left. Bitch.
Well, you know what James Bond says about women. Oh, my cheeks hurt from laughing. Okay. And thank all of you for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and come back for the next episode in our Battle of the Bonds, Dr. No. Womp, womp, womp. That's not the theme song to Dr. No. Oh, anyways. Well, goodbye, Christina.
Goodbye, Nicole.
Bye.
Bye.